Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Committee for Racial Justice. I'm Angela Scott, one of the steering committee members, and this is our monthly community meeting. We know that you could be doing other things right now, but you have chosen to be with us, and for that, we are extremely grateful. We hope this is going to be a time for a robust conversation, reflection, education, and healing. May this evening also provide a catalyst for action. The Committee for Racial Justice was formed 10 years ago, following a racial incident at Santa Monica High School when a Black student was chained to a locker by two white students who went into the other room and yelled, "Slave for sale," and there was a noose nearby. As what usually happens, the incident was minimalized by those in leadership as a boys situation. CRJ has been working against racism ever since. And we work primarily in areas of education, housing, mass incarceration, and police brutality and police reform. Tonight's Committee for Racial Justice workshop is a student forum designed to discuss racial trauma at school. This forum will provide a safe space for students to share some of their difficult experiences at school and talk with an expert in racial trauma and its generational effects. Our facilitator for this discussion is Chantilly Wijasinya. She is a licensed clinical social worker and has a master's in public health. She's also the director at Family Service of Santa Monica, a division of Vista Del Mar. So Ms. Chantilly is committed to using her role to dismantle the structures of oppression through direct impact and through developing and facilitating workshops on transracial adoption and LGBTQ plus youth in systems of care for prospective adoptive parents. As many of you recall, on June 26, 2020, an Instagram account named Dear Samo High caused quite a stir, and it was started to provide a resource for BIPOC students to air their issues related to racial microaggressions that were occurring at Samo High. Although Samo High facility has attempted to address some of these concerns, tonight's deep dive will offer the lived experiences of those students who are on the yard and in the hallways. This is our time to really hear what's happening. Before we get started, I'm going to hand off to Joanne, who's going to provide some updates. Get ready, buckle up, and let's talk about it.
Good evening. Welcome, everybody, to the workshop tonight. After the welcome, we always do try to have some updates because CRJ does work in several different arenas. And I didn't want to take that much time away tonight from our speaker and the students who are here. So I'm just going to share one thing with you, which some of you may not be aware of. And that is that the Santa Monica Public Safety Reform and Oversight Commission, which is the first in the history of Santa Monica oversight for police, civilian oversight for police, commission had a couple openings. And one of them was we were lobbying in Committee for Racial Justice and the Coalition for Police Reform People. We were all kind of lobbying to get one of the Black men who had applied for this opening to be named as commissioner. And we're really pleased to announce that Dante Harrington was just in the last city council meeting named to be a new commissioner. And he's with us tonight. Dante, if you want to wave at folks, or I don't see him now. I saw him earlier.
He's on here. I see him.
Oh, do you?
Here.
Yeah.
Fine.
Hey, Dante.
Yeah, I see him.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, good. Thank you. Welcome so much. And thank you so much for being willing to take on this responsibility. We're very pleased to have a Black man on, because it was a Black man who resigned, and we certainly need that input onto the oversight. Thank you so much. Okay, so before we get into the actual program tonight, I just want to tell you all that if you're not already on the email list for CRJ to get announcements in your email about our monthly workshops, which are usually held on the first Sunday of the month, not always. Just put your name and indicate that you're interested in being on the CRJ email list. And also, we have an active housing subcommittee. If you're interested in that, put your name on in the chat and put housing or just general CRJ. Okay, and we also are linked with a coalition for police reform. If you're interested in that, you can put CPR by your name. Anyway, we welcome you to get as involved as you're interested in being with working with us on anti-racism in several arenas. And I think, Angela, you have other things you want to say in introducing Chantilly, or did you do it all?
Yes, I'll just give a little bit more information.
Okay, good.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you, Joanne. And again, I have to say a personal note. Welcome, Dante, to the commission as being the lone Black female on there. I'm excited. We'll talk offline. So here I am. I'm so excited about tonight's evening discussion, especially having Chantilly on here, as well as Shuli. I see you are here, and I am looking forward to hopefully hearing some thoughts from you as well. But here I am, Chantilly Wijasinya, whose pronouns are she, her, and hers, as I mentioned before, is a licensed clinical social worker with a master's in public health. As a thought leader, she is committed to using her role to dismantle structures of oppression through direct impact, such as leading Vista Del Mar's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force. In her work at Vista, Chantilly has developed and facilitates workshops on transracial adoption, as I mentioned, and LGBTQ+ youth in systems of care for prospective adoptive parents, and currently runs the racial justice and social oppression workshops for her staff. Furthermore, she provides clinical supervision to MSW interns and highly values mentoring the next wave of social workers in the field. Chantilly is a member of the Building Bridges Initiative Leaders of Color Work Group and is a board member for the Field Advisory Board at USC. She will be taking us tonight through this lively discussion on racial trauma. I say go fight as a USC student as well. Handing off to you, Chantilly.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. That was such a lovely introduction. I appreciate it so much. And so with that, I want to be able to give the space to a couple of the students that are here because they really are, I think, the meat of this panel and really have the lived experience to be able to share tonight. So I would love to just give the floor for them to introduce themselves.
Oh, so I'm Gabby. I'm a senior at Santa Monica High School. Yeah.
And don't you have exciting news? Aren't you?
Oh, I'm going to be going to San Jose State in the fall.
Yay! Exciting news. Thank you, Gabby. And then.
Hello, I'm Jamila Williams. I am in 10th grade and I attend Santa Monica High. And I am a part of the orchestra program at Samo High and the secretary of BSU.
Great.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Let me scoot this over for me. So wonderful. I'm just going to jump right into it. I'm going to share a little bit of information in terms of data and statistics, fun stuff with numbers, and then give an opportunity for the students to speak. And then I'll end off with a proposed program that I'm actually trying to get funded to be able to address racial trauma and to create safe spaces for students of color throughout the district. So I don't need to do this slide because Angela did that so beautifully, but this is me. I'm Chantilly, pronouns she, her, hers, Director of Family Service of Santa Monica. And I always like to start off presentations with acknowledging the land that we are on and that we're currently occupying, and to really to recognize that we are on stolen land, and specifically for Santa Monica, it is of the Tongva Nation and the Tongva people. So I want to acknowledge them, the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today, and to pay our respects to their elders, both past, present, as well as future generations. And then what I like to do, there's a really cool resource. It's a land map. I'm going to put it in the chat for folks. But basically, oh, it's not in the whole thing. Basically, it is, you put in your zip code, or you can put any zip code, and it'll give you information about the territory and the original inhabitants of that land. And it'll give you a map. It'll give you information about the languages spoken and specific trades and things like that. So I love nerding out over this map whenever I'm traveling or when I meet someone from a different place. I'm like, oh, well, what land are you on? So that's in the chat for y'all. And then, yeah, we will jump into it. So in terms of numbers, there was a study done during the academic year of 2018 to 2019, and it was a national study that showed that over 1.6 million students were subjected to hate speech due to their identity. And over half of those, it was based on racial discrimination. So it had to do with their national origin or their race or ethnicity. And so then they also found that students who faced frequent discrimination are 25% more likely to be diagnosed with some mental illness and twice as likely to develop some severe psychological stress than people who didn't experience discrimination or did so less often. And I mean, if we really think about this and we really think about racism, and I'm talking about the whole spectrum, whether it is overt acts of racism or microaggressions, that takes up mental space in someone's brain. And that is a process to be able to recognize it, then to digest it and have to process it, and then to have to heal from it. So just thinking about those ongoing processes that are happening in the brains of people of color and students of color, I think it makes sense for there to be higher rates of mental illness and distress, because there's just so much more traffic happening in our brains. So for us to be able to recognize that this exists and to be able to create space for that proper healing and then also prevention is really key here. Also, another study showed that a negative racial climate led to lower grades, low engagement, and issues around mental health among students of color. So it's really about how can we define, I think that's another thing, like how do we define positive racial climate? What does that even look like? And I think it's hard to actually envision, because we do live in a very white supremacist world, and how can we see beyond that? And how do we create this racial climate where there's harmony in that way? So this brings me to the point of racial trauma. And this can also be known as race-based traumatic stress. And it's essentially the mental and emotional injury that's caused by racial encounters. So racial bias, discrimination, racism, or hate crimes. And again, like this, I think will also include microaggressions and the culmination of microaggressions over time. So folks who are experiencing this ongoing, or it can just be even one event, are at risk of experiencing racial trauma. And of course, in the US, Black, Indigenous people of color are the most vulnerable due to, again, living under this system of white supremacy and this white supremacist culture that we're all just engulfed and surrounded by. And one piece that I do like to point out is that racial trauma, well, it's kind of the next slide, but racial trauma does very much feel like a subset of post-traumatic stress disorder, but it's not an official diagnosis yet. I think it's a growing term, and it's a growing concept within the mental health field. And that's also why I like doing this presentation, and I like bringing awareness to this to racial trauma, because I think once we can actually name it, that's when we can actually put resources and put the efforts towards it and towards that healing process. So with racial trauma, a lot of the symptoms can be reflected or aligned with what you would see in post-traumatic stress disorder. So these are symptoms of depression, anger, like intrusive thoughts around the event, physical reactions. So that can be headaches, stomach aches, insomnia, hypervigilance. So just like being super sure and secure and trying to figure everything out all the time, low self-esteem, and of course, mentally distancing and physically distancing yourself from traumatic events. So always trying to preemptively figure out what's going on is also part of that hypervigilance piece. So with that, that's kind of the definition of racial trauma and how it exists. I would love to just kind of give up the floor to the students here and the panel that's here to be able to share a little bit about how this may have been witnessed or manifested in the school setting, and just anything that they are willing to share. And ahead of time, I do want to give such a special thank you to the students here today, because this is really hard stuff to talk about, and to be able to come onto a Zoom and to share this it requires a sense of vulnerability, and to be able to give yourself in that way. So I really appreciate y'all in advance for sharing and for being here tonight. So,
Louise, is it possible to put Chantilly and the two students into the frame? And you would have to stop sharing your screen, Chantilly.
no
So
problem.
we could see the three of you.
Mhm.
Okay, Gabby, do you want to start, or can I go ahead and?
Go ahead and start.
Okay. It's pretty hard to talk about, as Miss Chantilly said prior, about racial injustice and, personal trauma that I've experienced myself. I can speak for a lot of African American students, because not only have I saw it in classrooms, but you see it just like that this is not only happening to you, because you're not going to be the only kid at that school for the rest of like your life and the life to come. So that's a big deal. But also I wanted to say that ever since I came to Santa Monica, like starting from second grade, that's when I've started to notice racial difference. I came from a LAUSD school, a charter school. It wasn't in the best area, but my parents, they made sure that I had the best that I needed to. And then once we moved to Santa Monica, that was like the best of the best in schooling, and SMUSD known for its schooling and opportunities that I'm taking advantage of now. But since like second grade, when I started going to these predominantly white schools, and that's when the racial tensions started to apprehend. Like it was minor, like when I was younger, when the kids started to figure out the little racial difference. I mean, it was second grade. I thought it was just kids being mean, but then it would graduate into fourth grade and fifth grade, and then you notice that they would make fun of your hair, and then the teachers would make fun of your hair. And then when you're talking about important topics through American history, like slavery and segregation and Jim Crow era, then you have all the students in the classroom turning around just to look at that student, or the African American students in the classrooms, that like, oh, that's you, or oh, they so they know the difference, and they know the difference in color, and the breakdowns of how teachers explain the situation more factual, not really understanding how it could affect students who are reminded each and every day that because of their skin color and because of their racial background, that is why they're going through what they are going through. And I think it shouldn't be something just taught in the classrooms as another lesson that students have to learn, because when you think about it, when you hear the same thing over and over as years become, because we need to know American history for the rest of our lives, and it's a never ending. Education is never ending, really. One can never stop learning. But this isn't a history lesson when that history lesson is not over. This is more of a social lesson that dates back from starting from the past. So these issues that we are experiencing today are not new issues just because it's now being told in the media and it's more prominent. And now we have hashtags and all these things, which are great that people are now, opening their eyes to this. But this isn't anything new under the sun. I mean, it's been hundreds of years from this oppression of being apparently the lowest of the low. So that goes down to me personally, and why I like to bring these things up is because I have felt as before that I had to straighten my hair, that I wanted to change the melanin in my gums. That's another part about me. I have darker toned gums, and I've been told before maybe there was something wrong, or if it was I had a skin disorder, but it's just melanin in my gums, so I can't change that about myself, and neither will I have darker knees, and I can't change that about myself, because that's just how I am. And those are things that I've experienced and have been bullied for and have been seemed ugly from in past classrooms, all the way up from 7th grade. People made fun of my nose and told me how, oh, your nose is so flat, you should probably look into getting surgery and all these things, because that's when kids started, I guess, getting surgeries in middle school. And then it goes down to body shape, and because how my body shape different and how I look a different way from how my mother is, that's when I get from middle school, like when we were changing in locker rooms. Now it goes into, oh, I can't change in the same locker room as they are, because I'm seen as some animal that's, you know, so different just because of my skin tone, that people want to stare and prod, and I'm just another human being in that locker room, and you wouldn't want me staring at you just because of your skin tone or because you look a little different. So then I would have to change in the stinky bathroom stalls, because it's just that unbearable of a stare in the place that my own people, as in the Barrelmar community, of course, the indigenous people found this land, of course, but once my people, African Americans, who settled upon this land in search of escaping the terrors of the South, came to, then they were all, from an eminent domain that we're just learning from now. But this happened a long time ago, and it should have already been stated. This is happening in 2022, and we're learning about these things now. And it can go on forever, the things I've experienced up until now in high school, taking AP classes, and I'm still stared at, because like, why are you taking an AP class? How you can't handle that? You're not as smart as I am. I've even been told, and nobody wants to study with me. And it's just it's an endless list of things that goes on, just because of that knowledge of something that can't necessarily be taught in the classroom, but can be taught in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And things that teachers, and no things, not teachers, because teachers, they are given the material to teach. I don't put it on teachers at all, but things that the Board of Education should most definitely implement that difference. And it's okay to be different, and it's not another lecture, it's a social things. Like, we need social talks and feelings that can't be described but be described. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like if I decide that I want to walk out of a room because of a topic is just too unbearable, because I am personally affected by these things, then I shouldn't there shouldn't be a question if
Mm-hmm.
I'm uncomfortable, And I feel like if any student at any time is uncomfortable about any topics that are making them feel like not terrible, but it's just so much to feel, and it's just too hard to really look at, then they shouldn't be questioned. And that's how I have to just go through that, and to see and a repeat of the same old story that's told. And that's like, it go that it that's it just it's a
Mm-hmm.
whole deeper like understanding, to like express, like words can't express it. That's how much like it's really bad in like Santa Monica's, I mean, Santa Monica's it's amazing. It's an amazing, it has amazing schooling, but you know, it's a lot of things that I've been through that I don't think I should have gone through. That, you know, I've shared some things just now that I'm comfortable sharing with, but you know, it goes deeper into things that have affected my family personally. So yeah, that's just like a short debrief of the things that, you know, we've went through, but I think it's just important to know.
Thank you, Jamila. I'm gonna ask you a little follow-up, if that's okay. You shared so much about your experience, and a piece, like a word that just keeps coming up for me for you, is this idea of resiliency, and how you are standing here and able to share about a lot of pain, it sounds like. And so a question I have for you and for others here to maybe learn and to understand is how what what has kind of helped you through it, like when those instances happened, what what has helped you really have this, it looks like you have a lot of self-love, which is absolutely needed. So I'm just curious to know what has fostered this beautiful confidence and this magic around you, frankly.
Well, I would say I think my family, most of all, we've helped ourselves through it because there isn't really like any way you can like help yourself of something that just never ends. So
Mhm.
we're kind of faced with like we're going to get everything we can and just ignore each and every problem that comes our way until we are able to get into a stable area, as in financially, as in all of us go to college and get that, you know, get the job the occupation that we want to have, and then turn around and reflect. And that's pretty much what we're going at right now. I mean, we can reflect as much as we want in the house, but really it's not really going to be much of a change until it's actually said in front of the large. I mean, look at the situation that happened at my school. You know, I'm a black student at something that happened 10 years ago. I'm 16. That happened when I was 6. That wasn't, you know,
Mhm.
10 years isn't a long time. And so I'm looking at it like, wow, why didn't I know that this happened? Like I'm hearing about this now. I didn't know that a student was literally, you know, that goes deep into how kids are like influenced, and it's sad because how are you, like, what makes you, you know, that obligated to do things like that, which is why like I said, it's hard. We don't really get over it, we don't really grow from it, we don't really have any healing from that, and we kind of are like just depending on each other when we shouldn't have to, you know.
Mhm.
My favorite quote from Taraji P Henson is like, humans aren't meant to be strong, buildings are.
Mhm.
So that's why, you know, we don't think that we have to heal from that until everything is actually healed and actually sealed in that racial tension. Then we can finally heal from things like that and to help us heal. Until then, we just like pretend it's not there and just have to keep taking those hits, which is
Mhm.
unfair, you know.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you, Jamila. Gabby, did you want to? And actually, and if folks have questions, feel free to send those questions to Janet or Angela in the chat, and we can blast them. So, but in the meantime, Gabby, did you want to share?
Yeah, so my experience at Santa Monica is a little bit different than hers. I did come here a lot later in my schooling. I transferred here during my junior year of high school, and we were online for my junior year. So I didn't have like a decade's worth of stories to share. Prior to coming here, this is the first time I've ever been at a school where there's a majority white population. Most of the schools I've attended have been mostly Black and brown students. And also faculty and staff at these schools have been majority Hispanic. There's been many more Black teachers than there are at Santa Monica High School. Um, I would say, like we talked about, I think it was Ms. Angela Scott, I believe, said it in the beginning. There's the Dear Santa Monica High School page where they talked about racism. That's something I saw before I got here, and it definitely made me a little bit worried. And that was kind of, I walked in trying to be cautious of those things, and they did end up being very true. I think my main thing that came from Santa Monica that was a negative impact was I've never had my intelligence questioned as much as I have here. Jamila talked about like in AP classes, how we get a lot of stares, and I feel like everything I say is questioned. Like I say an answer and someone else has to say the same thing for it to be true, or you got to Google it and double check. That's something I really hadn't experienced before. And I would also say that our AP classes are heavily white. So I do feel like there's a little racial motivation towards questioning what I have to say. I would say that also my issues at the school had mainly come from my other fellow students. Just a lot of it, it's not even coming out of malice, it's more out of ignorance, and that goes towards the need for education earlier on. So that could mean ninth grade, that could mean kindergarten. We need to be teaching people, like Jamila was saying, like teach people that there are differences between people, there are cultural differences, we're gonna look different, and to be aware of that and how to just communicate with each other in a way that's not disrespectful. I mean, Santa Monica, it's definitely been a benefit of coming here. It's definitely been a benefit to come here. It's by far the most well-resourced school I've ever attended. So it's not been all negative, but I definitely think there's just so many things that I have never had to deal with till I got here. And it's basically, those things have basically been racism, that it's just more heavy. You're gonna experience racism everywhere, but being in an institution or a school like this where Black students are so heavily, we're just heavily underrepresented, or we're just a really tiny population. I think it's only like 5% of the school is Black. And then on top of that, there aren't that many people who work on campus. Obviously, like Dr. Shelton, he's Black. There are, I think, a couple Black teachers. I've never had any of them. And there's like a few other people, but the overwhelming majority is not. So I think that definitely has an effect on the school and just how people treat each other.
So I do have questions. I don't know if we want to wait, Chantilly, or how should we?
This is a great time for some
Okay,
questions.
awesome. Okay, so first I had a comment from Shuli, who Shuli could have said it herself, but Shuli said, I really appreciate Jamila sharing her painful experience. It takes a lot of courage and vulnerability to speak your truth. And she said, as a district employee who helps support Samo High students, she'd love to hear more about what the social talks you mentioned. What would that be like in your vision? And then if you'd be open to talking to more folks at Samo about making it happen. She's asking, what can we do as a school community to move towards healing in that respect? I think that's a wonderful question. Let's start there with just that piece.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds absolutely amazing. I would love to, share some parts of my experience. Some things can't be shared. Like I said, it's deeper and like really personal experiences. But some experiences that I think socially that other kids are probably going through, like I had to, would be amazing to share, and I would love to participate in and help, especially sharing the cultural differences and really not treating kids like they have to. We're more dependent on the attendance of our children, like Santa Monica, the Board of Education and teachers are more like dependent on the attendance and on the attendance rather than how students actually feel. And I feel like that is like a big deal, and I think we need to talk about that and like certain topics in the classroom and who it can affect. The world's changing, there's new generations, and there's more issues and problems that are going to happen because of the population and the world changing and these social issues going on today that has been bigger than it has not ever been before, but more globally than it has ever been before, of access to different issues and how it can affect children. And I think that should be something that we talk about, and I would love to participate in and to share, to help with that cause, to help stop the issues that we're having, or at least as much as I can. But yeah, that sounds great.
Nice. Thank you. Just to briefly introduce myself and my role, I work at the school district, but my desk is at SAMO. I coordinate mental health counseling. So Chantilly is an esteemed, respected colleague of mine, and really happy that this is happening tonight. And I just wanted to clarify also that I wrote that question before Gabby, you had spoken. So wanted to also just acknowledge that I appreciate you also sharing your experience. It sounds like there's a lot that we need to work on. There's a lot. And this has been true for a long time, but I am really, as much in my role as I can, happy to get conversations going or start some just brainstorming of what we could do to create more space to really have open conversations. I think some of that did happen virtually in the summer after the Dear Samo Instagram page kind of blew up. I don't know if either of y'all were here to participate in that online forum. It was during COVID, so it's all online. But I think now that we're moving a little bit more into spaces at school where we can really gather together in person, I would love to meet and talk and help maybe connect some of the folks who I think might be key players at the school to get something like that going. So just really appreciate both of you speaking your wise words and sharing your experiences. It's very valuable.
Thank you. So I have a couple more questions, but Chantilly, I want to kind of lean in on just having heard both of them, thought of intergenerational trauma and how it folds into not only their experiences, but probably even what they had heard from their families, what their families experienced as also children, students in a school, and just even leaning into what Jamila had said. And I know it's happened to myself and my daughter, because my daughter, of course, is she's in the district too. But that piece of you feeling less than, both, right? Gabby's being challenged intellectually, right? And then here Jamila is being challenged from the melanin perspective, right? My gums are too, like all of that weighs in. What are the adverse effects of that, Chantilly?
So thank you, Angela. And I mean, it's so layered, and I think some are so obvious, and some, I think, like we're saying, racial trauma, that's an immediate effect. But when we really think about how trauma affects our bodies, it is stored. Like it is, when we talk about intergenerational trauma, this is our cells and our bodies really store that trauma within ourselves on a cellular level. And then when we have children, it's passed on. So even when we're talking biologically, that is one way trauma is inherited and passed on. Because there was a study done years ago that looked at Black maternal health and showed that Black mothers had higher levels of cortisol in their system because of the stress of racism. And so because of that, there were higher complications and greater complications during childbirth. And of course, on the receiving end, the care that is received in medical institutions isn't of the same level as their white peers, but it's all very layered. But so even in that sense, for it to be stored in the body and then passed on generation after generation. And then this idea of being challenged intellectually, or even just being labeled or assumed to be in some kind of category. In my presentation later on, I do have a slide on how racial trauma really can feed into the school to prison pipeline. And I think that in so many ways just causes holes in families and in ways that cannot be repaired in one lifetime or in future lifetimes. Because if ending up in a juvenile detention center or ending up in prison really does leave a family with less to stand on, and less resources to be able to move on and survive and continue. So just, I think it's the culmination of healing that needs to occur, but it's also, we have to prevent the harm from happening. So how are we supposed to be doing all of that at the same time? But we have to. I don't know if that fully answered your question, but that's—
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did. It kind of scratched the surface. I have a few questions here. Another one is, Gabby mentioned having, she came from Lusinger, right? Where you had a higher number of Black and Brown teachers. I wanted to lean into that for a moment too, because I think that's also very important. Representation matters. And if you see yourself in that role, a lot of times that helps in the academic success of our BIPOC students. So can you kind of share, I guess, the difference of that familiarity, right, that you felt at Lusinger versus going to Samo High, where it was like we had talked about a complete opposite side of the spectrum. What can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so honestly, just throughout my whole life, like every single elementary school teacher I had was a Black woman. And then like middle school and half of high school, they were mainly like, there were some Black teachers, there were a lot of Hispanic teachers. And even when we talk about like our dean, our counselors, assistant principal, principal even, there were just lots of Black people, whether they were men, women, whatever the case may be. So I felt like there was a certain level of understanding. Just as far as like when we speak, I felt like I didn't have to change the way I spoke entirely, or I had to kind of tone down anything when I was speaking to a teacher, when I was speaking to an administrator of some sort. I definitely think that there was also less stereotyping coming from them onto me or to other students, just because it was like we look like each other. We're coming from the same kind of cultural background even. So, or we have those stereotypes put onto us by other people, so we know not to do that to ourselves. So I feel like I was less judged. I was definitely looked at in a more positive light. Like I wasn't expected to be doing something bad or really just any expectation at all. I was just a student. But that was definitely a big difference for me coming in.
Thank you for that. Let me see, just a couple more, then I guess you can hop back in. Chantilly, so let me see, there's a question regarding the percentage of students of color. Do we have the actual numbers of what that is at Samo High?
Yes, we do. And I have it actually handy. So according to this website, according to the internet, I mean, I can share my screen again, actually, if we want to look at it, because I have it pulled up. Where did y'all go? Here. So this is the breakdown. I don't know what year when this was last done, but it's 41% white, 9.1, 9-ish Black, 36 Hispanic, Latinx, 8 Asian, 5 biracial, and what's this little sliver? And then Hawaiian or Native Pacific Islander is less than 1%, 0.4%. So yeah, that's the racial breakdown. And I would say that the other, I mean, at least I know the other schools where Family Service serves, it's similar numbers across the board, with Black students hovering around 10%, and white students being around 40, and then Hispanic around like the 30. So it's a similar proportion across the schools that we serve.
Okay, awesome. So then here's a question from Craig Ali regarding the role of the BSU within the campus community. How are they, quote unquote, considered as, I guess, with relation to advocacy or support? And then what do you see as a preventive measure as opposed to curative from the standpoint view of what oversight looks like for, in these issues of racial trauma? I guess I would start with both Gabby and Jamila, because you both mentioned you participate in the Black Student Union. So can you kind of share that experience and how that's been for you, as that is, I guess, your home on campus, right? As far as, having that familiarity, right?
Yeah, that's definitely, I would say, a place on campus where I feel most comfortable and welcomed too. One thing about Santa Monica is I feel like I've been here a full year in person, And a lot of people just like won't speak to me, especially in classes where it's a little less people of color in them. And that might not be because I'm Black, that might just be people are antisocial, but you know, that's something I've just kind of noticed. I feel like in BSU, people like will actually have conversation and connect a little bit more and just feel, and you can tell everyone feels a lot more comfortable in that room when we're in meetings rather than like in class, and are a lot more open in themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the board and all that, but I get like a really good experience. Like this is my first time being on the board at BSU. Last year, unfortunately, I wasn't able to be a part of BSU, but this being my first year and I was voted in showed like it didn't matter how long I was. I was not competing, but it was already a person in a upperclassman who wanted the secretary position as well. But it showed me that even though that upperclassman was already trying to get the secretary position and I was voted in, it showed that my ideas and how I feel mattered, and it was fair, and I was actually treated the same and equally, not just because of race. And race, it plays a big role in a lot of things, but me being in by my ideas, it showed me that gratification of my ideas matter, which is a great thing about BSU, which for a lot of Black students, like you can share anything. Our talks, it's a really like a really big impact, and I think our talks should go, community wise. People should come listen into our talks, like Black students in general talking. I think that'll like get a lot of things done, as well as socially. And we have like talent shows, and we just had we just went to the Black College Expo as a field trip, one of our field trips, and for the seniors to see different schools and opportunities. And I was a part of that. I'm not a senior, but we gave freshmen the opportunity to go and see colleges and different scholarship opportunities, and booklets of scholarships were given out, and just these trips that in more and more things for Black students coming up. And I think that's a great thing that we're working on at BSU, and I'm all in for it. So it's a lot more to come, but it's definitely a safe space and an amazing environment for students of Samuel High. All students of Samuel High welcome, but especially Black students at Samuel High.
And I will say one more thing about BSU. It made me feel like I was not crazy, because we would talk about these things in the meetings, and I was like, okay, I'm not tripping. This is actually a thing that's happening and bothers other people. Because again, like I said, I hadn't really experienced a lot of the things that come with going to a predominantly white school, or a school where there's just not very many Black people at it. So it definitely made me feel like a little less insane about those things.
Oh, thank you. Robbie has her hand up, so let me acknowledge Robbie.
Okay, I'm sorry, guys. I just had surgery on my throat, so I'm not supposed to be talking, but I had to come on here. I know. I had to say, you young ladies are amazing. Amazing. I'm an alumni of Samuel High, as well as BSU, as well as United BSUs for Southern California. The way you express yourself, and that's why I wanted you guys to be able to do this, because I heard about the talks that you were having. No, Gabby, you're not crazy. I was in BSU, had the same experiences. Our commissioner, Dante Harrington, was also a graduate of Santa Monica High School in BSU. My daughter was 4 years president of BSU at Howard University. She graduated. But I wanted to say a couple of things. One, I'm interested to know, Jamila, which is my daughter's middle name, how you know about Belmar, and how did you learn? Because Lewis and I were talking about you guys should take a tour of Santa Monica, Black Santa Monica. And also, I know there's a few teachers on here. And so you're right, Angela, representation does matter. but I have to tell you guys, my first Black history teacher at Samuel High was a white man. His name was Dan Morrison. He cuddled us. He took us in a room and taught us what we needed to know. So I think that teachers can be accountable when they see things that happen in class that make other students uncomfortable. I think they should speak up. I think they should teach. They are the second teacher. I mean, you learn at home, but your teacher is who you trust, and they're supposed to teach you. So I think that's very important. And I've been talking to Dr. Dradi about that. And so I just also want to say, thank you guys for coming on, but I want to know something. You guys had almost 20 people sign up to come here today. What happened to your fellow students? Do you have any idea?
I texted someone and they were like, oh, I can't make it. I'm not home right now. So I think people just had their things going on and I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, you know, I'm not holding it against them. I will be at those meetings as soon as I get better. But you guys keep advocating for BSU for life. I had to fight to keep it because they wanted to get rid of it. So hang in there. And I see 2 presidents.
Okay, I wanted to go ahead and acknowledge Dante Harrington, who also has his hand up. Robbie mentioned him. I think his hand shot up after that. And then I have a few more questions on here. Dante?
Good evening, everyone. Yes, again, my name is Dante Harrington. I am an alumni at Samuel High. All throughout Santa Monica Unified School, Malibu School District. And I just want to first say that you 2 ladies, I really take my hat off to you guys just for being vocal, having the courage to voice how you feel, what you're going through, and not being afraid to be heard. Because if we're not heard, how do we resolve the issues that our youth are going through? Because you guys are our future. And if we don't stand by you guys or what you guys are going through, then it just goes swept under the rug. And I think that's what's going on a lot in our community, things that are being pushed under the rug because we don't have numbers. But what I can say, back when I was in high school, we had a Black student union that was over 25. I like to use the word deep. We were ready, and we had people that were ready to step out on the front line. As Robbie said, her daughter, Brandy, who I grew up with, was very vocal. She did not hide behind fear. She felt that if she said something, that somebody was going to hear her voice, and we were heard. You know, there were a lot of teachers that stood behind us and understood what we were going through. And then you had some teachers that really didn't care, but that's taught, you know, like you said, Jamila, like just hearing you speak made me want to say something. And I'm going through what I went through what you are going through. I was the darkest out of all my friends. I was called Black Roly-Poly, Tar Baby. Your skin is, why is your skin so wrinkly? Oh, your elbows look like you've been walking on your elbows, stuff like that. And so you start to put on this shell and not want to talk to anyone because you felt like everyone judged you because somebody made a joke. But that has to stop because we're all human. We all bleed the same. We are just different colors, but we all have love for one another. And that's what we need to bring back, is the love. Because at the end of the day, I want to help and understand what you ladies and other students are going through. I have a 5-year-old child who takes the bus to Will Rogers Elementary, and I picked her up from daycare, and she said, "Daddy, I don't want to ride the bus no more." And I asked her why. She said, because the little kid, I won't say the names, but he called me a Black African Nigga. And this is 5 years old. And I was so angry. I immediately got on that bus, and I told the next day I told the bus driver, my daughter doesn't want to ride on this bus. Were you aware of what the language was said to her? And she says, no, but if you can follow me to the school, I know your daughter's not lying, because we don't use that word in our house, you know? And for a kid at 5 years old to say that to another child, that's being taught in the house. A lot of ignorance is taught in the house. But then I know when I spoke to this kid and asked him, did he know what it meant? He had no idea. He just said he heard his uncle say it. So, you know, there's a fight against your family that have been taught ignorance. And then you have those that have been taught to love and respect others. So I say that to say that you just you ladies keep your heads up. Gabby, congratulations on your acceptance to college. And I think you guys have a very bright future ahead of you. And if they allow me to come on campus, I would love to sit on that board with you guys and just hear, because it's not going to start. I mean, it starts with you guys, but it takes a bigger push from those outside in our community to help things go along. And I want to help you guys get there, because Santa Monica is a beautiful city. We have some issues, which every city, county, state has. But if we all stick together and work them out and be boisterous and mean what we say, we can make it great again. And thank you, ladies, again for coming.
Thank you for that, Dante. So I have, like I said, I'm trying to go through here quickly because I do want to get to the end of your presentation, Chantilly, because I believe you still have a ways to go, right? I want to.
No, I think this is
Okay.
rich content. So I can just like share the information at some point. I can squeeze it in. So I'm easy.
Okay, awesome. Okay, thank you. So then I will go back. I have, like I said, this question is from Joanne. She wants to know for you two students, whether you had any experiences specifically with teachers, you don't have to say their names, dealing with issues of, disrespect and microaggression in light of the emphasis on social justice standards, right? So despite that rolling out, and I think y'all both kind of mentioned some issues within your honors and your AP classes. And I will say I was in honors and AP up in the Bay Area, dealt with the same thing. A lot of times it was just me in that class. So clearly nothing really has changed too much, even though we all profess to be progressive. I'll just put that out there. But yes, without naming names and giving us receipts, if either of you had any, experiences you want to share, allude, but not say their names.
Yeah, so there's one teacher I have this year who continuously has said things, not just about race, but also homeless people a lot. She really likes to say things about homeless people that are extremely disrespectful. But one thing I've noticed just with another Black student in the class, I think there might be like 2 or 3 of us in there, if I'm counting correctly. It's not an AP class either, it's a regular class. She continuously kind of picks on this one Black guy in our class, has sent him out multiple times where it's like, he really didn't do anything. And then for me, she speaks to me like I'm stupid a lot. Just like, if I say something, it's like, doesn't even hear it. Person 2 seats away from me says it. Oh, that's such a great answer. That's right. Yes, that's great. You know so much. Really just praises them and then like questions what I say, like, oh, I don't know about that. And just kind of just gives you a look of like, oh, you just kind of treats me as if I'm not very smart. And it feels very disrespectful. And I've also heard from other Black students in her different periods that are actually in different grade completely. She does tend to go at Black students quite a bit. So that's my main issue with the teacher. It's really just been her at this school. Yeah.
Man, there's like a lot. And you know, it's funny to me because it's sad that it's a lot because I know there's other Black kids going through the things that I had to go through, and that's so messed up. Like my elementary school teacher, every time we would have parent teacher conferences, I excelled in reading and writing and things like that, but I had, you know, I struggle with organization, and you know, I'm here now, I'm the interior decorator. Look at my room. Um, but like I have like grown in a lot of things that, you know, obviously it's going to take time for me to grow in, but she treated me as if I was grown, as if I knew each and everything that I was doing, but I did not. I was a 8-year-old, you know, in her classroom. This is a 4th grade classroom. This isn't that serious. And she came from a private school teaching, so you know, I understand how they're more strict, but this is public school and I did not from a private school. And you know, so she would definitely every single time parent teacher conferences, she would tell my mother of things I was doing wrong. And when my mother would respond and say, oh, she doesn't do that at home, she'll be like, well, that's surprising. Or she's like, are you sure about that? Maybe you need to, you know, go into what my mom needs to start doing. And I remember a lot of parent teacher conferences like that, and she talks about different things at home. And then when my mom turns around and talks to me about it in the classroom, she wants to have her little laughs and smart remarks in the background, like we asked for it, but we did not. And, you know, that's unprofessional. And she was the assistant principal, and, you know, we had problems with her, bigger problems than that, which I cannot share because it's very big. But then it goes into middle school, and then I had problems with teachers not backing the African American children's in the classrooms. Like it was, yeah, it was my 8th grade history class, and this is the same history teacher that I've heard call another student a black monkey need to run back into the classroom before, or get his black A-word to class before the bell rang. And I remember talking about it in one of our discussions, and I was like, that was my history teacher. So that goes into me saying, oh, students who are leaving, they're gonna have to deal with the things that I have to deal with. So then that same teacher, we were watching a Jackie Robinson documentary, and it was going to the part where he was going inside the bathroom stall at the gas station. And that's, you know, he was approached by like a group of white, I don't remember the movie entirely, I do not like, you know, and then the kids were laughing at the remarks that the white people in the movie were saying, and they were laughing at the names they were calling them. And whenever Jackie Robinson would cry because he's passionate about, you know, especially Chadwick Boseman, he's an amazing actor, you know, amazing actor, and rest in peace, you know, rest in power. But yeah, they were laughing whenever he would cry. And you know, I was just like shocked, and I was like, why are you guys laughing? This isn't funny, you know? And technically it was a slap in the face, because are you laughing at him because he's a black man crying? Is he not supposed to be crying? Are we supposed to be these strong what? You know, and I was really shocked. And I will talk to Miss Valenzuela. I exposed her name, but hey, she needs to be put out there. I apologize. She needs to be put out there because this is terrible. But yeah, I talked to her about it, and she said, no, I didn't hear that, so I don't understand. Maybe that happened over there, but you know, I didn't hear it, so I can't say anything about it. I'm sorry. And this is multiple things. And whenever I would write my papers, she would say, "Oh no, it wasn't too like you can do better than that," you know. And that's not a good reason to why you gave me a 75 answer, and then I read someone else's paper and they get 95, 85, and I'm like, I have better grammar, punctuation, I'm doing fact checking, I'm doing things that middle school students don't need to do. Like I'm, you know, and I've never had a bad grade in English class, always 90s and up, like up in my English grades. And I was surprised, and I'm like, why, and I never really got that answer. And I hope a kid isn't going through what I had to go through, but those are examples of teachers. And hey, I exposed her name, but I really don't care. I think she needs to be exposed. She's a person, an administrator who should not be working at a middle school, because she really is detrimenting mentally and emotionally students there, and like she did to me. And I've had problems with this too long, and it's enough. So
Wow.
Also like to, if I could
Yeah,
piggyback
go ahead,
off of
Shan. I was about to send it to you. Yeah.
Yeah, well, so at where I work at Family Services Santa Monica, we have social workers at different schools throughout the Santa Monica School District. And so they are there on site to be able to provide mental health support to the students there. And so one of the many observations that have been reported to me is that teachers will provide referrals for Black students. And this is specifically in elementary school. It happens in all of them, but there's one elementary school in particular where this is happening quite a bit, where we will receive referrals for Black students to receive mental health services, but they will be described as aggressive or just problematic in the class, disruptive, with no reasoning behind the behavior or the symptoms that they're showing. But when we get referrals for white students, it's always like, oh, but with the context of, oh, but parents are experiencing a divorce and they're exposed to this, that, and the third, and this referral is for you to explore what's going on. So really seeing this contrast of labeling some students, but then providing examples and providing support for other students. Just how that's communicated even shows the bias that exists there. So yeah, that's our experience.
Wow. Thank you, Chantilly, because I think that, they kind of solidified what those experiences are, with the kids. It's triggering, it's triggering to me. I've been down that road, so I know what that feels like. I do want to get to Michael Paramilter. I did ask about the population, so I'm not sure if you had an additional question because she did show a racial. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to commend the students, Jamila and Gabi, for sharing what you did, particularly identification in terms of people of different cultural backgrounds and races that I think we resonate with each other with reference to anxiety and to negative and feelings of fear and anger. These are very important elements that do connect us. So I was very moved by your expressions because I felt it emotionally. And I want to just juxtapose. I think it's worthy to focus on that a little bit. The other thing that really struck me when I asked about the population of at the school, my first reaction was, my God, the people of color outnumber the white people. And then I was thinking to myself that, well, I'm being a little naive here, because what is going on between the people of color in terms of alliances? Is that something that, for instance, the Black Student Organization, do they consider alliance with other people of color? Or is that a problem there to some degree?
The teacher I was speaking about was not a white person. A lot of the students who have said things to me that are disrespectful or racist are not white either. So there's definitely, there's people who want to form an alliance between groups, but I would not say that that's just like a given, we're all sticking together. I would say even if you look at the social circles of students, it's extremely segregated at our school, kind of self-segregation. Obviously the school's not saying, yes, stick to your own. But that's definitely something I hope we can try for more in the future, or I won't be there, but Jamila can talk about BSU, all that stuff next year. Good luck. But yeah, that's definitely a great point, talking about that alliance part.
That's actually funny you said that, because the teacher that I was speaking of, of my elementary school teacher who pretty much went legally with issues of what my family had to go through was not white either. So that, most of the teachers that I've experienced racial issues with were white, but the teacher who, really like changed the course of our lives a bit was not white. And the first school that I did go to was of largely of Hispanic, Latinx community, and I've the most experienced of like physical aggression were of that community, and the most experience of microaggressions, which I feel like affected me a little bit more than the physical aggressions, were of white students when I finally left that elementary school. And I think that goes into when I was speaking about the lower income minority areas, because I was at John Muir priorly, and John Muir isn't really known for its education. It's at the lowest of elementary schools. It's not really the best in Santa Monica. So, and I think that has to do with race, considering it's highly Latino, Mexican people that go to that school, children that go to that school, teachers, and I think that's very unfair. Yeah, so it's, and even here in Santa Monica High School, you see the African Americans, Black students hanging with the Black students, and then you see the Latinx people hanging with the Latinx people, and then you see the larger population of white students hanging with each other. And I don't really see a lot of Asian students, but they kind of go more into with the white students, and I think that's a separate talk that we have to have. But yeah, and I've experienced that level, and I'm not sure, I'm learning about this in AP World now, but that racial theory of whites being at the top, then it was the Asian, then the Latinx, and then the like Black that's exactly how it's going at Santa Monica High School right now. And I've been treated like I was at the bottom, yet I am in the same class as you. And so that's like the issues that I'm going through. And so there isn't really an alliance. And people can say they want to be friends with you and they support BLM, but then turn around and say the N-word and do microaggressions against you and make talk about your body and your facial features. So yeah.
And Jamila, I think you did a really great job of also just explaining how anti-Blackness is present across all cultures and all backgrounds. And the part around the school and being at John Muir, it just took me to when Gabby said that this was the whitest school that she's ever been to, but it's also been the best resourced school. So why the investment tends to be where the white population is, right? And so I think that's a larger conversation of what we need to do with the Board of Education and funding and all of that fun stuff. But I really appreciate what you shared.
Yeah, thank you, Jamila, for the breakdown of that. I just have 2 questions left, and then I'm turning it all back over to you, Chantilly. I hope that's okay. One question was from Bob Gord. He asked, in addition to BSU, and I think we kind of alluded to this, is there any other kind of a focus group for Black students in which you can share your experiences? And I think, Jamila, you had mentioned how you'd like to you envision something, but y'all don't have anything else besides BSU. And then I know on the parent side, it's the African American parent, student, staff support group as well. But aside from those 2 kind of pieces, I think that's it, right?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any other group other than BSU that's available to students on campus for Black students specifically, no.
Yeah, neither am I. Even though there is a parent students support group that you just mentioned, we do not know of that. Like I haven't got anything on the news, like on the loudspeaker bulletin board, that I have not seen that, and it isn't prompt for some reason. But yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. And then here's one other question, which I think goes back to you, Chantilly. Do you sense that female students cope better than male students, as far as resilience and everything?
I think, that's such a good question. my first thought is the idea of toxic masculinity and the fact that I think, generally speaking, men aren't really given the opportunities as much to be able to speak and share and have those support networks, in terms of, because men are typically raised to be like, you have to man up and be strong and not share emotions or show emotions in that way. So I don't think it's really, I don't want to say anyone is inherently better at coping. I think the structures and society at play give rise to more support for women than men in that way.
Okay.
I'd also like, oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go for it.
Yeah, I'd also like to speak to like your question and what she said. I think, like, for me personally, I know my brother, he did attend Santa Monica High School before. He went for his first 2 years. He had the same teacher as me that I spoke about today, and she would just go at him all the time, similar to how she does the Black boy that's in my class that I have with her. She's kind of part of the reason he's like, yeah, I'm gonna go somewhere else. I think too, like, when we see who's getting in trouble a lot of the times at our school, I see like a lot of Black boys in particular being taken to the office and getting in trouble. It feels kind of disproportionate, because I'm like, I just saw a white dude do the same thing and he doesn't really get in trouble. But they're like, I would definitely say that the Black boys at our school are very targeted when it comes to like having like behavioral issues or getting in trouble for stuff that everyone does.
If you wouldn't mind me to add on to what Gabby just mentioned, like, yeah, I've seen that as well. But also the fact that Black people in general are known for our popularity, because we are very rhythmic, we are very talented, we are, we are a lot of things. We're not everything, we are basically every single thing in the media right now that is like popular, trending, inventions that we have created. We've always been like out there, never in a box. So I feel like even then, so especially African American men, people, especially the toxic masculinity that goes into that, like with Miss I apologize, Miss, I need my glasses, I cannot, yeah.
Chantilly, you got it.
Yes, just mentioned that toxic masculinity, it goes also into that as well. Like, we as Black women, we're undermined and we're kind of separated off because everybody wants to copy the Black men in this issue. I feel like all the rest of the races of men in Santa Monica High, they're all copying the Black men at school. And then with the women, they're not copying us really, but they are not copying us, and they don't express how they're copying us, but they do copy the Black men, and they express they're copying the Black men with the slang, the AAVE, and that's so prominent, and you're copying them with like the swag and gang signs that I've seen, and that has nothing to do with African American, that's not connected at all, but they make it connected, like being in gangs and being hard, and that's nothing to do with what we are as a people, but it is prominent, and you can tell that that's what they're copying. But with African American women, we are not, we don't act that way, and we hold ourselves to a higher standard, but yet they do not, and they still don't have that same respect as they do for the Black men, who I'm not saying isn't doing much, but they're just being themselves, and they're being held to a higher standard and popular, and and that's like the imbalance as well as a community that we have to work on, but also as socially and in media that we have to work on. So that's like, it's a big deal at Santa Monica High with that imbalance.
Yeah, I would definitely say, like, my observation is like Black boys have more issues with teachers and administration, and then the girls, it's more like our peers in social settings where we have more issues than them.
Wow, thank you both for that. Chantilly, I think you have some future licensed clinical social workers on here with you. I'm just putting it out there. I think these two are amazing. You need to think about changing your major, Gabby, I'm just saying, or adding a double major, why not? And I also, before I'm gonna hand it all back to you, Chantilly, I sent both the young lady messages regarding, we have an Our Girls Rock event coming up this month, and it is for Black girls. It's gonna be held at Virginia Avenue Park. I'm dropping the info in the chat for both of you two right now. And then if anyone else wants to know about it, please reach out to myself or Gina Frazier, who's on here. I want to thank your parents. I don't know if they're on here, but clearly they are doing a wonderful job with both of you. The self-confidence that you both emulate is wonderful, wonderful. And self-confidence, awareness of self, awareness of community, awareness of your obligation is worthy to be commended. And you both bring tears to my eyes right now because I see the potential that you both have, and it's just beautiful. But again, I'm gonna hand off to Chantilly because I know she has some final things, final remarks.
Okay, I guess I can share my screen real quick, but I do see there is a hand up. Did we want to, Craig?
Oh, I'm
Sorry,
so
gonna-
sorry. Yes, Craig. So sorry. I didn't see your hand, Craig. Commissioner Miller, yes.
Well, good evening, everyone. Like everyone, I'm just completely blown away, emotionally moved, touched, hugely impressed by the panelists. I hugely appreciate the reference to toxic masculinity. And then with regards to coalition and coalition building and idealizing or looking to or respecting, I would ask, or I want to ask, is there an LGBTQ plus union on campus? If so, have there been efforts to build coalition with them? And then just on a personal note, I want to say that I know a gay guy of the 1970s who looked to and somewhat modeled himself after Black women and still does, and that's me. And I particularly appreciate the opportunity to model myself after Commissioner Scott. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Gabby and Jamila, do y'all want to talk about any type of coalition and building that's happening? Or I know the group exists on campus as far as LGBTQ plus. I know they have a prom coming up, which I believe Janet's church sponsors, but if y'all want to speak anything about.
Far as I know of, I've heard it on the loudspeaker of, LGBTQ support groups and things they have going on, amazing things and great things. But when it comes down to that with sexuality, there are a lot of African Americans in the LGBTQ plus community. So I don't think that's a problem with us expressing that, especially the main people fighting for, LGBTQ rights are African Americans and have to change in that are African Americans.
Mhm.
It's in African American history, it's in American history, and that's a big deal. But the main problem with it is because of a sexuality, I understand what you're going through, and that's not necessarily true. I've been told multiple times that, oh yeah, I'm gay, so I know what you're going through. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Mhm.
I'm like, how does that have anything to do? When you walk into a room, I don't know that you're gay. Unless you say a big poster sign saying I'm gay. Well, okay. But when I walk into a room, you know that I am Black. I'm Black. So I'm like, how would you know that what I'm going through? So it's that problem of respect and space. I think you just like the man mentioned, the guy who mentioned, I believe, the counselor. I can't really see my glasses right now, but he mentioned that a lot of gay men, specifically white, they copy off of African American women, especially at school. I've been called, yeah, sis, whenever a gay white male's talking to me, and I haven't called him sis once, but let him talk to his friend, he's not calling her sis, or they change their approach to me. But and that goes into, again, stereotypes, which is prominent into the white population. So it's not necessarily about like the sexuality, it's still upon race. Again, it's like prominent in race and stereotypes, but also that respect. And I have a lot of respect for the LGBTQ plus community. That, I mean, I respect people in general, so that's all I really can say. But that's just, in my opinion, a lot of it has to do with because I know there's a lot of issues in the LGBTQ community as well with the Black population, because there's no respect in there as well. And that goes into at school, which is why a lot of Black people at my school, students specifically, don't feel comfortable going to those group talks of the LGBTQ, like, things that they're going on, because of that disrespect and non like giving credit or feeling of acceptance there. And I feel like that's a totally unfair. So yeah, that goes into like why a lot of African American students don't be a part of a lot of social things like the LG and personal things like the LGBTQ plus organizations and different opportunities that Black students can apply for, but once they do so, they're treated differently because of them being Black, which goes into the reason why there isn't really that connection of both, and just respect in general. So that's
Well,
what
I would just like to suggest that every community, including the LGBT community, has members that act in ways that you wish they wouldn't, and could do better in being welcoming along racial lines. I didn't make my comment to suggest any problem or any equivalency. I made my comment to suggest an opportunity, and I was hearing a desire to be more powerful in a push for equity and equality. So I just wanted to speak up and say, I hear you, I support you, and as a longtime community organizer, I would look to the LGBTQ plus community as a potential source of greater support and greater coalition. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to quickly, I'll do a few points so I can be respectful of folks' time and not to cut anybody else off, but just to wrap us up and really think about the themes that we've heard today and what are the ways in which we can address racial trauma and just racism on campus and to best support students of color there. So across the board, it's the idea of being able to invest in mental health resources in schools. So creating spaces for students of color to be able to share and process and heal. Then also the idea of employing restorative justice practices and healing circles. So one of the major pieces that give rise to the school to prison pipeline is the extreme punitive measures and zero tolerance policies that exist, specifically targeting students of color. So when there are restorative justice circles, there's more of a conversation to understand the context that I mentioned previously that's often erased when it comes to a students of color's experience. And then also to fold into that, it gives opportunities for other students. So, I mean, so many of the accounts today, we're talking about peers and students of other students of color from communities of color, white students also perpetrating racism. So restorative justice circles also provide an opportunity for learning across communities as well. So that's one piece. And then we mentioned greater representation of school staff reflecting the student body. So that students, there's so much in being able to see yourself in, especially in positions of power and authority, and to be able to feel that safety in that brave space. And then overall, just greater education around implicit bias, microaggressions, and racism for the student body and teachers and the school administration. So other than that, I will say that I am currently trying to find funding to implement an anti-racism program at the schools where we are on site, which is McKinley, John Muir, Edison, Samo High. And really what this program will offer is everything that I mentioned previously, except for representation. I can't help with the hiring process at SMMUSD, but we can advocate for it. But the idea of our social workers being trained in restorative justice practices and holding those circles and holding those spaces, also to be able to have therapy where we can address racial trauma that's never really singled out. It's always like kind of an afterthought or not really a thought at all. So for us to really be able to highlight that and support students in that way. And then also to be able to have groups and workshops with staff. I think so much of this comes down to implicit bias. And as Jamila had mentioned, a lot of folks are raised with these values and thought processes, and people don't know, a lot of people don't even know that they're being racist. And it's about helping folks unlearn what we've been socialized to learn. So to really have workshops and trainings to unpack that and confront that throughout the school. And then I think a big piece is to be able to offer family support. So groups for parents who, whether parents of students of color or white allies, to be able to create a place where we can dismantle white supremacy and really confront racism in a confronting way. So I will not take anybody else's time. That was the quickest I could do that and the most succinct I could. So that is my idea for our program, to be able to be implemented at these schools and hopefully create those safe and brave spaces.
I think this is amazing. I think that we definitely need to support Chantilly and her proposal here. We got to do it, whether we have to write letters to the Board of Education or whatever. We, of course, have support for our BSU and our girls here. Man, you guys are amazing. Keep being amazing. And hopefully we'll have a part 2. We need to bring y'all back so y'all can, we've always wanted to hear from the students. And so we want to continue to hear from you. But most of all, we want the people who make decisions for your school to hear from you. So we'll make sure of that. I'm sending this video to Dr. Drawdy as soon as it's ready. So he needs to know it's coming, okay? So, and I do also apologize for the parent group. They were founded in 1992. I founded it to be a support to BSU because of these issues. And so if that's not really happening, we need to deal with that, and we will. Okay, so just give Ms. Jones a little chance to heal, and we'll get it going. So
Thank you, Robbie. Janet, you want
No more talking, Robbie. No more talking.
Janet, you want to close this out?
Yeah, so I just want to say that this is a group, the Committee for Racial Justice, that wants to have your back and does support you in all the ways that we possibly can. We've been working for 10 years with the school, Seminole High, and we understand some of the intricacies of the system that doesn't want to be moved. And we have been, bump our head against the wall more times than we've been moving, but we have made some progress in some areas. And so we do have your back. We want to support. We are a mixed, diverse group. And so there are times when we can be support where other groups may not be able to, that are, so I think, and the more community support you have, the better. But this is one place that we are so proud of, and of you, so courageous. We understand that it took courage today. And we understand that we don't know what you're left with now after this, but how you're processing what you just did. And I want to say that I just feel like, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, because this is what it takes to, I know that it shouldn't be this way, but you just did educate a lot of people. And I thank you for that. You shouldn't be the one that had to do it, but you did it, and it's appreciated. So thank you. We unmute ourselves now, and we say, we do a call and response. when I'm leading the exit benediction, whatever it is. So I'm going to say something and then you repeat it back. Okay. I'm not free.
I'm
not free.
Okay, unmute, everyone unmute. Okay, it's chaotic Zoom unmute. Okay. Okay. I'm not free.
I'm not free.
So you're free.
Till you're free.
You're not free.
You're
not
So I'm free.
Till I'm free.
So I'm not stopping.
I'm not stopping.
So we're all free.
Till we're all free.
Go in peace and work for justice and don't stop.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
You.
Thank you all.
Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
Yeah,
Bye.
Gabby and Jamia.